Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan back with Joe Kaiser on this edition of Illinois Rising. And Joe, coming up this Wednesday, you have Illinois Republican Party county conventions for the purposes of, among other things, nominating a member by congressional district for the State Central Committee, which is the governing body of the Illinois State Republican Party, that's headed by Tim Schneider, state party chairman and Cook County Commissioner, present. So without getting into too much minutia with respect to Republican Party infrastructure, these State Central Committeeman posts will determine who the next state party chairman is in May, and in part determine the future of the Republican Party past former Republican Governor Bruce Rauner when he is removed from office in November's election and serves out through January. And the question is, do we have the same dynamic at play that we had in the primary? Conservative reform base versus surrender Republicans that are in the leadership posts.
It seems like that, and I think people, when they make these kinds of decisions, really have to just reflect on the track record. What has Tim Schneider's track record been in that position? Pat Brady before him. The Illinois Republican Party isn't really a successful brand. I mean, people like to criticize Mike Madigan for being in that post for a long time, but look, Mike Madigan's been successful as the Democrat Party chair. So when you're making these kinds of decisions, you have that dynamic that you just mentioned kind of unfolding, people need to ask themselves whether it's a conservative versus an establishment kind of thing. What's the track record been of Tim Schneider? What was the track record of Pat Brady before that? And then make the decision from that. Yeah,
well, and to that point, the entire Republican Party under Rauner and Schneider defines itself in the negative. We're not Mike Madigan. And that's all they got. Well, that doesn't seem like a lot. It doesn't seem like it's going to be enough. And doesn't seem like it would galvanize anybody. So when Mike Madigan goes away, which will happen at some point, then what are we left with? We're still not the guy who used to be around here. It seems to me that the Republican Party is in full surrender. And this week we saw also 8 Republican senators, ostensible pro-life state senators, vote for the Equal Rights Amendment. This has been like the signature hard left legislative item, constitutional amendment that the left has been pushing for 45 years. They're 3 states short of what they need. And pro-life, people who call themselves pro-life senators, are voting for an equal rights amendment that would codify abortion on demand at taxpayer expense, would eliminate the differences between men and women, all of the left's agenda. Here's the thing that Rauner, Schneider, these 8 senators, including some conservatives that, I'm otherwise inclined to like, Sue Rezin, Tom Rooney. I mean, it's just pathetic. Full surrender because their leaders are in full surrender. It is lemmings to the sea, and that's my point. That's where this goes. The Rauner and these surrender Republicans think if we adopt the left's cultural Marxist policy agenda, that saves us. When in point of fact, it eliminates the need for you. And that's the California Republican Party example. In 2005, when Schwarzenegger folded in and led Republicans to fold in with a hard left cultural agenda, the Republican Party was eliminated from relevance for, since 2005 and for the foreseeable future, where they are the super minority party in terms of legislative seats and they're completely irrelevant to the conversation in California.
And for voters, if you're getting kind of the same policies from both Democrats and Republicans, they're going to go with Democrats more often than not. I mean, why would you vote in Republicans if they're not offering a policy difference? Democrats are better at pushing their own agenda anyway, and that's why Democrats succeed more often in the state than Republicans.
Right. So it highlights 2 things. One, obviously the hypocrisy, and that you can't rely on these people to be who they say they are. Obviously, number 1. No, and number 2 is that this is all just navel gazing. This is all every man and woman for themselves. There's nothing that unifies the Republican Party in the state, that tethers people to one another. There's no kind of common set of first principles. There's no common policy agenda. The platform is irrelevant to many Republicans. That doesn't bind them to anything or anybody. I'm talking about rank and file conservative base versus the Republicans who've thrown in with the ruling class in Springfield and elsewhere. I mean, it's remarkable. And also, too, as if there isn't enough hypocrisy abounding, Tim Schneider, and all the criticism of Jeannie Ives for daring to primary Governor Rauner. These are the guys who like primaries when it's in their interest and don't like primaries when it's not. And that's the first principle of this surrender Republican Party. We do whatever in the interest of me and my friends, and I have no principles. I just have interests that shift. And so Tim Schneider got to be a Cook County commissioner. How? By primarying Carl Hansen. And he lost the first time around, a Republican incumbent. And then he beat him the second time around. So that's how he got to office. But that's only acceptable for Tim Schneider. It's not acceptable for people that Tim Schneider designates as unworthy. And, so you just wonder how you sustain a Republican Party when you tell people to sit down and wait your turn, and Tim Schneider or Bruce Rauner or Bill Brady or Jim Durkin will tell you when it's okay to run for office. Not that you'd want to anyway at this point, because then I'm part of an organization that stands for what?
That they're not Mike Madigan, that they're not J.B. Pritzker.
That they're not Mike Madigan. That's going to inflame the passions of conservatives who want to turn the state around. I don't think so.